thought I would check in with Journey to Mars. I've been reading it out loud. Quite the project, since I think it's going to be going for, we're not even halfway there yet. This is from chapters 28 to 28 to 32. I just figured I would stop in for a bit and just sort of talk about it. It is definitely a good exercise for reading because it is so very descriptive, has a very kind of rich vocabulary. It's not really interested in action, which kind of makes it more challenging, I think, as a reader, because reading it out loud, because you got to kind of find the action in the description, if you know what I mean. So that's been an experience. There's also lots of French in there. There's also a lot of made-up words in there, which are a challenge. And particularly we've gotten into a fete, where there's just a ton of characters, and it's like there's a bunch of older monarchs that basically all have the same old guy voice, because I'm reading it on the fly to begin with. I don't have that many voices, so everyone's if you're old, you're talking like this for the most part. And then hopefully I won't start a thing and then finally go, oh, and then it's Prince Salimia, so I will talk a little bit. I'll talk in this more of a voice like this, and this is my feminine voice, which is sad, but I try not to make it too annoyingly. Just like this is just me. This isn't like an actual feminine voice, but this is me saying to the reader, this is a woman talking, so I'll talk like this. I don't know. I have to come up with something very crudely, and obviously have no skills, no chops, whatever at this. And I'm sure people who actually do this for a living go through and have like, okay, there's this character, what voice am I going to do? And think about it and practice it and have things at their fingertips, that they put the work in. And I'm not putting the work in, I'm just reading it out loud. So we're going there. So here's a little audio visual for today. That perhaps is Gustavus W. Pope. He did Journey to Mars and followed it up with Journey to Venus, which I probably will not read. I'll probably just read this one. It's interesting, but it's not that interesting. So yeah, maybe that's him. This is being sold on Abe thing for like $300, this Journey to Mars, where they have this picture at the front. So I'm assuming that might be the author himself. Handsome fellow with his high necked collar there. Interesting. So yeah, other than that, yeah, just like, wow, there are lots and lots of descriptions. This is very much we're exploring a world more than having a plot happening, like on a Edgar Rice Burroughs thing. It is funny how even in the descriptions you start clicking things of kind of worldview. We do actually have a little bit of action. The Martian princess Selima goes tumbling into these waterfalls, well, not waterfalls, but the eddies just before the waterfalls, and is about to get sucked in to giant whirlpools and, die. And he, Frederick Hamilton, the dashing young U.S. naval hero of our story, dives in after her and is swimming vigorously. But there's a hilarious point where he describes the chaos of the moment, and he calls it. He says like, oh, it's so chaotic. It's like the mobs of kind of a revolution, or the communes. It's like that. It's like, oh, okay. We suddenly slipped in. We're equating kind of nature's kind of chaotic, violent, destructive stuff with, mobs and communes and so basically socialists and all that kind of. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting that your mind goes there. And it is funny that we're having the repetitions that come up, the echoes that come up, probably because this is all going from kind of like knightly dudes doing knightly deeds. It's like a young lady's gone in the water, and so the young gentleman has gone after her. This happens in the Gulliver Jones has exactly the same plot. It's funny. I thought that book was a little bit on the picaresque and slow side. That book is a freaking pumping thriller novel in comparison to this. There is, and so we get into this magnificent ball. And man, if I hear the word indescribable used in this novel one more time, if I hear them say, oh, this was so indescribable, because the second that Gustavus W. Pope says something's indescribable, I know as a reader of having to read this stuff out loud that there will now commence to be a paragraph, a big paragraph, or a couple of big paragraphs, all describing the stuff he just said it was indescribable. He can never go, it was indescribable, so let's move on. No, that never happens. He never stops to... He always describes, he always continues on with his descriptions. Now, at this ball, there is actually a conflict. My God, some guy who wasn't invited comes over and basically demands that he should get the first dance with Selima, the kind of highest honor. And Selima's like, no, I already promised that to Frederick Hamilton here. You should give it to me. It's like, no, it's for her. And then he turns to the second princess and goes, well, I'll dance with her. And she's like, no, I already gave mine up too. Obviously kind of enjoying sticking it to him. And he's like, he kind of glowers for a little bit. He is apparently the prince of the most wealthy, most giant of the countries. And he just kind of storms off. And, in the final chapter that I will talk today, chapter 32, Muttering Thunder. All these chapters starting with quotations, usually of poetry. There's been a lot of Byron in this last bit from Childe Harold. Maybe I should read it at some point, but there's a lot of Byronic stuff going on here. I guess that's kind of the at that time is probably the closest kind of thing to kind of like chivalrous and kind of dark and brooding and action dudes. Because it doesn't really have any deep thing other than like, oh, here Byron's doing a little description of thunder here. And it's like, in this chapter, there's thundering going on, thundering of character. This prince, Theogor, I can't even remember what his name is now. Have to write it down later and try and figure out a voice from, because he seems to be the baddie. He just basically, he leaves without saying bidding his adieu as he's supposed to. And everyone's very upset about this. And they have a big, long discussion about how they're upset about this. But some kings who are obviously kind of beholden to that bigger kingdom, it's like, oh, no, we think because he's so high and he's so powerful and so wealthy and has so many subjects, you probably should have bowed to him. And this is one of these things where our heroes, the hero ones are like, no, we shouldn't have. We're the pure Martians. They are mongrel. You guys are mongrel Martians because you've mixed the races, and even worse, you've mixed the Plutonians who fled from their dying planet, no longer habitable by humans. They seduced them, even though we accepted them with great with great generosity. We accepted them. They seduced our Martians and produced mongrel race. It's like, oh great, we get our heroes are freaking pure. We're the pure bloods. This is it's like, oh great, you're spouting basically Aryan race Nazi. Though not that anyone here is white, but the races should not intermingle, the mongrel bloods. It's like, oh God, horrible racism. And that's the heroes of this is the heroic, great, pure race of our story. The ones who are the best of the best, putting forward in this narrative. So you do get that of like, just, you always have to assume that everybody is horribly racist in any of these older stories. Even if they're not doing anything bad in this scene, it's like the second something comes up and they start talking about the purebloods and mongrels and all that stuff, you're going like, oh God, yeah, you have to remember everybody is racist. It's like, oh God. So there is that. This is, I think I said it was 19 something. This is like 1880. this, I should really write down the thing, but it's like, Pope died like before, he died in like 1902 or 1900. Yeah, something like that. Basically a year, somewhere around where my grandfather was born, this guy died. And so I guess you have to take it as like, yeah, here's some kind of unpleasant facts of popular fiction at the time is going to reflect the popular viewpoints of the time. And a lot of those viewpoints are highly reprehensible to us nowadays, but, that is what it is. And it's interesting to, you always think, it's like, and what things am I spouting that someone in 100 years time, 100+ years time would look back and go, oh God, I thought he was a nice guy, but then he said that, probably after he's eaten his big hamburger. And it's like, you know, he eats living creatures. How fucking disgusting of a person that must be. How morally reprehensible. I can only imagine. Or there's something else I'm not even thinking of, because, you know, we think of the obvious things like, oh, vegetarianism will be the shift. It's like, what will be the big shift? My conceptions of gender, sexuality, monogamy, things like that. Like, you know, what's going to be the thing that, you know, people hundreds of years from now will just look back and go, who was this guy? Hi, people from hundreds of years in the future who will never see this video because it probably won't last on YouTube for more than like, 5 years. But I'm sorry for all the stuff. I am trying, but as much as you try, you can only be human, and that can sometimes be a very messy thing. All right, with that long digression, I will stop here with Journey to Mars by Augustus W. Pope. Gustavus W. Pope. I always want to say Gustavus W. Pope. Fellow far back in the future himself, as far back as maybe as I'm projecting forward. Yeah. Journey to Mars. More videos later.